thank you so much for coming out to support the Hollywood Historical Society, especially their Vice President, Stephen Toth. He is here to talk about the 50th anniversary of and the history of Hollywood Library. So thank you very much. So thank you.
Some of you may not know me, and if you don't, my grandparents moved here to Hollywood in the 1930s, and they were farmers on Pembroke Road, and I lived in the first section of, it was called West Hollywood at first, but it ended up being Pembroke Pines, and that's where I got my first library card, and it was called the West Hollywood Library, and then now it's a small building in Pembroke Pines that I don't think anything's in it anymore. It's in the original building. The very first book that I ever checked out of the library was The Brave Cowboy, and I've read this book so many times, and I like my late fee on it is incredible. No, my mom bought me one, but she bought it like in 1972 or whatever. But I dreamed about this book so many times, and it's mostly about the kid dreaming about cowboys and Indians and stuff like that. One of the things that she had just mentioned was that the Broward County Library was going to, they were setting up the system at the time. And I'll get a little more into that in a second. But the Hollywood Library was actually the first library to open to be part of that system, other than what was called the Fort Lauderdale Library System, which was Fort Lauderdale, Riverland, and the Mizell libraries. And then there were two mobile book vehicles. And then there were three libraries that will come in at the same time, but Hollywood's opened first. But I'll give you that history in a second. And the concept of what this lecture was about was to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Broward County Library System. But the Hollywood Library System had existed for 47 years before that. So I thought it was important for us to go down the road of the history of the Hollywood Library System until it got into the circle here and became part of the Broward County Library System. It still was part of the Hollywood Library System when they moved to this new building over here for a pretty long time still. They were in that building the longest time, and then this building they've been here for almost 20 years. Most of you have been going to the library, other than you, Clive, because you've told me you're not a library guy.
I'm here now.
Change that.
The president of the, you go to the library a lot, but it's just the lectures.
Is it the Kindle library?
So they had
he can't take his shirt off. That's why.
Exactly.
That's why he doesn't go.
Exactly.
He goes to the Hallover Library.
The Hollywood brands.
Not about me.
I think I saw Andy there too. So in 1927, I found this very interesting because in 1926 we had this horrible hurricane named the Miami Hurricane. And in 27, the Hollywood Women's Club at the time was named as the Ladies Auxiliary of the City Club. They met at the Parkview Hotel on April 11th. This is the Parkview Hotel, which is where Publix was. And they set up a library in the lobby here in April. And it was a meeting where they had tea. And they had bookshelves put in there, and they had an alcove that had books in it. And that was where the Morse family came and donated the southwest corner of their building on Hollywood Boulevard to become officially the first library. And we all know this does not exist anymore. We have someone from the library system coming in now. So the Morse Arcade still exists. I did not go over to look to see what was in the southwest corner now. And I did question when we go through the kind of history here about the second floor next door and how they had built this building, that I'm inquisitive to see what these places are, but I didn't examine them yet. It seems like it was going to be easier for me to do it down the line. So the first library stayed in this building it started in May of 1927, so they were only in the Parkview for about a month. And two of the original board members were Virginia Ten Eyck, is that how you pronounce her last name? And Vera Hammerstein were two of the first people on the board to make these decisions. In 1940, the City Commission agreed to take over the city library's functions. The library, I guess it was private before that, but the public could go to it. In 1941, there was a library ordinance that was adopted for a new building that they wanted to leave. They needed a bigger facility than they had here. So they were technically there for 14 years in this building. And in 1941, the library ordinance was adopted and a new building was officially opened in 1942. And the new building was where the post office is now on Polk Street. And this building existed until they tore it down to build the post office. And it's amazing, and there's not very many pictures of this post office, but one of the most interesting things, and I need to thank, first of all, the Research Center at the Hollywood Historical Society for Mary Beth giving me so much help finding all the stuff that I needed for this. I think, and it's very soon in my presentation, this next pamphlet is amazing because it was the pamphlet of the shelving of what they were going to do for the library on Polk Street. And this company was out of Syracuse, New York. It was 1945 when they were going to, actually, they're showing off our library for someone else because this library was in 1942. They built the library, but this was them showing how they built the inside, the floor plan of the library. Karen remembers, right? where the books used to be there. And this library existed until 1959. So they were here for 17 years. So we're thinking the first one was about 12, 13, 14, is that right? About 15, both were about the same at the time. There's another picture of the shelving and everything. And again, Karen told me she remembers this so much. So in 1974, they decided they needed another bigger library. When I get to it, I have this great chart that one of the librarians in 1971 has done that had explained how many books they had in circulation in the library, how big the population was in Hollywood. One of the most interesting things, and I won't have the figures totally right now, but we went in 1959, and we'll get the answer perfectly in a few minutes, from about 35,000 people to, by 1971, within 12 years, over 100,000 people lived in Hollywood. You have to remember there was a lot of empty land at the time for them to build out west. This was post-war. And two, I'm not sure this is factual or not, but I've always felt that the Florida boom in the late 60s and the 70s is because you could get air conditioning in everybody's building and house. I remember when our electricity went out for a few days, either from a hurricane or whatever, and I lived in an old building, old house from the 1920s, and my grandparents were farmers down here. Elvis, Monroe Dickens, my grandfather was a florist down here, and I told my wife, let's tough it out like Elvis did, it's July, but he lived down here when it was hot, and we went and got the hotel room over on Harrison Street, you know. My cat would like hog up the only piece of tile in the house and like, you guys aren't getting on this, you know. So that's where this boom came in, you know, that you could be comfortable down here year round, and some of you, we were seasonal, you know, nobody lived here in the summertime. It was brutal. So, and it's brutal again in the summer, isn't it? I'm sure you all agree this is the most brutal summer we have ever had. It has just been constant, you know. That water's warm out there, but we're not stirring up many hurricanes, and that's kind of cool. So in 1974, they had a concept to build a library somewhere else than where they had this library because of the amount of people that have moved here. They needed a bigger facility, and we'll get to sort of the size of that in a little bit. And then they looked into different locations to where they were going to move this library to. And City Hall Circle was one of them that they thought of. They also thought of, there was a Woolies supermarket at 2700 Hollywood Boulevard right down the street here. And the size of that was great, and there was a building built already, and they could retrofit it. There was a spot on Van Buren and Dixie Highway that they thought about. Where the Publix was, they thought on that spot that they were going to build a library in the 70s there, where at the time when this was written, it was the Wachovia site, which is the bank on Polk and 19th Avenue with a like bronze mirrored glass just on the outside. So these were the choices that the city was thinking of for putting the library. And then 1744 Van Buren was another one. And they shot these ideas around, and they narrowed it down to City Hall, Woolies, or the Wachovia site. It's out of order. It's okay. And then they realized that they already own the property here. You know, they were going to have to buy the property, and it was going to, you know, it would be costly to retrofit those buildings, and they chose this spot. And they built this two-story building here, which is the first library I remember in Hollywood, which is the building right across the way here, which looks identical to this day, you know. And this building was there until, well, let me think about what the plans are here.
Steve, when did they build that building?
I have my other paperwork here. 1959 is when that came into effect. I have it here. And it'll come up on the screen where the yeah. So in 1959, they dedicated this building, the two-story building, because the other buildings were too small. The post office took over the site at the old building. Does anyone remember, was the post office in the old building, or did they just tear it down? Well, no, but when they moved here, did they tear down the old building and build the post office, or at one time was the post office in there? Because I did see a picture of like when they had just built the post office, but I didn't really look into what year that was. So, for instance, just to backtrack, in 1927, they had 225 books, and they had 2,900 people in the city. This is just after the 26 hurricane. 10 years later, from 225 books, they had 7,000 books, and then it said 15,000 in circulation. This was done by Peggy Ryder, which was the city librarian here in 1971. The statistics are great. It's going to pop up shortly here, but it's better that I read it off here now, and then you'll see. In 1942, they had 1,000 more volumes, so that was only 4 years later, and the population was 6,300. 1951, 10 years later, they had doubled the books, almost 15,000 books, and the population was 15,000. So everyone had a book on their own, I guess. I don't know. So by the time that they were going to move to this building, they needed a bigger building again. And this is still, so the population more than doubled. I knew you were going to be here. That's awesome. So he lives in the old neighborhood that I live in Pembroke Pines, and although he's a little younger than me.
But definitely older than I look.
And he works at this great place called the Tree Amigos that like grows all this good stuff that he's like amazing. His family runs it and it's super awesome. And I saw that he had posted something online, so I knew you'd be walking in the door. I was pretty sure. But there's a little building, there was a library in that neighborhood that's been gone forever in Pembroke Pines. It's over like near 68th. There's a little community center.
Community center.
Did you ever see that?
I don't know if I ever saw it as a library.
Oh,
I've always only known it as a community center.
Right. Yeah, it almost seems like nobody's there. I drove by like in the last 5 years, you know.
Yeah.
I've told him that we probably need to start the Historical Society in Pembroke Pines too because of what it is. I have a very funny story about the South Regional Library also because that was built near my house over near BCC or BC. So in 1959, in 51 we had 15,000 books, and 59 we had 28,000 books. So they needed a bigger place, and we went from a population of 15,000 to 35,000. So that's when they built this building across the street here. In 1968, they planned to take over the second floor of a cost of $35,000 to remodel it. And they tried to get federal aid for it, and it never happened. There was never a library on the second floor next door. And it's interesting because this all just goes up basically to before Broward County had come into the library system. In 1971, they had 56,000 books, and as I said, our population went from 35,000 to 104,000. Thank you, air conditioning. These two, I mean, part of this to me was like, you know, just going into the files and the help from the archives here and the help from the research center, you know, brought me all these very interesting things. And this is, you really can't see it, but it's the real estate property ledger for them to be able to come over here and use the property here to build the building over there. And then this also was like a cool sort of plot to show you where City Hall was. And I'll have a really cool picture of City Hall coming up soon here. This is the building right here. And then this was the building that they were building over here in 59. Does anyone remember with City Hall, was there ever a building here until they built the library or not? Because I have an aerial view.
The jail was over there.
The jail's still there.
Yeah. Because I've been in there.
Yeah, I know. And they still have like and they use it for storage, like they use the armory for storage.
The Army just opened today.
Yeah, we were all over there. So this is the sheet that I have that was giving us all the information from the different populations and the circulation of the books. I found this super fascinating. I don't know, I like numbers. I've always sort of talked to people about how, like, we just boomed at that time too, you know? I mean, when you hear our mayor now say that we're gonna get, you know, 50,000 people in 5 years or something like, it's absurd. That didn't happen ever before, except for this one particular time. And they had a bunch of land to build stuff on at that time. We don't have that anymore. You know, our sewer system can't handle that, you know. But we're here to talk about libraries, not development. So here is an overhead view. I'm guessing, I can't really tell by the cars, but I'm guessing in the 60s. It's already built here. Obviously, this is where the new library, what we're standing in now, was going to be. The building across the street is there, so we know that that's there. But so much is empty around here. I can't really tell with the cars. I don't think this is the 70s yet. This is probably still the late 60s. But I really loved this shot here because it kind of exemplifies like what was going on here. I'm not giving away your address, Karen, but I think this is like,
Trying to figure it out.
I think you're over there, but it's not there yet,
That's your parking lot.
No, it was built in 73. My condo was.
And it's kind of interesting, it doesn't, how we have the driveway all the way around here now. It's not there right now. This is still there, but interesting. So this was probably in between that sort of boom time. This is, we couldn't really blow this up too big, but at that time, that was still the old City Hall. And this is the old City Hall here that sort of matched the Hollywood Beach Hotel and the Parkview Hotel, and then what ended up being the Riverside Academy. I remember the first time I ever posted a postcard of the original city library here, and the mayor at the time had no idea there was another building there. He would think they would have told him that. This is a 1960 library card, and I remember mine had this little piece of metal in it, and you can see here on the top that you'll see when I flip it over, when you see the next picture, that it had like your library card number on it, and it was a way that I guess they pressed over it to know that you were checking something out. I'm sorry that I have Carol's name on there, but come on, that's cool. Mine was smaller. I don't know if kids were smaller, if they changed what it was. This was about the size of, almost the size of like a due date card, And then mine was like the size of a driver's license. And mine was this light colored green, and then this was like a pale blue or whatever. This, Jean's going to get mad at me for saying this. If you want to go visit this, it's over at the Research Center. Tell them I sent you. So, Tina went next door recently, today, to see if this mural was still there. This mural was painted in the library across the way here, and for some reason, and there's no sort of history on it, it's like a Chinese mural. I don't see what really exemplifies it being China here, but I really wanted to give like a feel of like, the community, or what people, what the library card looked like, what was inside these libraries, the people who went there. The library is really important to me. Like I've told people here that, I would have never seen a Fellini film if it wasn't for the library. You could go down there and get a VHS tape, In the early 90s, you could still check out 16 millimeter reels of film, And my buddy that was a film guy, Cliff Childrey, of course, he would check them out and would put one on, and one of them was like an episode of Fat Albert, And it was just like, why is this even here? Or why would a television program be on 16 millimeter film? Or did they show it in a movie theater? I don't know. Again, I mentioned earlier, probably before you started this lecture, I sent my first emails from this building here, because this is where you could have a community computer. You couldn't own a computer in your house, So, and I still have mystery@bellsouth.net, So I just, my wife reads 10 times more books than I do, but if it wasn't for my wife and the library system, I probably still would just be reading The Brave Cowboy. And digging around, I tried to find like the most just interesting or community people or any of this stuff. So Mama Clown was here in the 80s and the 90s, and when I stumbled upon this picture, I had totally forgot about her, But it was just like amazing. And you know, and she was the sweetest person, and she had a car that said Mama Clown on it, and she'd drive all over, and you're like, there's Mama Clown, you know? And I think it's funny because, you know, they always say kids are scared of clowns, you know, and he doesn't look too, he's kind of, or maybe he's worried that this doesn't look like him. Or I'm thinking he drew her because of the nose. Maybe that's what it is. Oh yeah, look at that. That may be it.
Definitely.
You know? And Mama Clown love kids. It says it right there. I did want to just show you how like some of this stuff was filed down the line, and I don't know what it says on there, but it, you know, I knew when I saw her picture, I knew it was Mama Clown, you know, but it was really reassuring that it was. So it's 1989. That's when this was taken. So this would have been taken in that building over there also. This is John Goodman. It's not, but I fooled Clive with that. This is at a Valentine's thing inside the library here. And again, I just think it's important to library is about the people and the community and the people that come to these places, and that the library is a place that doesn't cost anything, you know, that anyone can get a library card and anyone can go down and get a Fellini film or, you know, Fat Albert on 18 millimeter. I don't ever remember checking out records from the library, meaning vinyl albums, you know, but CDs and, you know, cassettes and, you know, books on tape and all that stuff, super important. And I know we haven't got to Broward County yet, but we're getting there. So Mama Clown would have been when we already took over this. So we're getting close to where this was. And just some more information on the back. I kind of love this one, you know, the squash book. So this was actually taken in a library, and it kind of gave up on my big book over here. So they kept looking to like expand like different places for the library system. So one of the ones that they had chose in the late 70s was the A&P Food Market on Johnson Street in 441. And that was, I remember that library being there. It was a giant supermarket so this is a picture from there, and that was there from, I think just from the 70s until the early 80s. I don't know if it made it to the 90s. And did it become a Walgreens afterwards? Or I think so. And maybe a thrift shop at one time? Yeah, but I think it was a Walgreens after, you know. And I think it's important to mention, even though the Carver's Ranches Library is not technically in Hollywood, it was unincorporated Broward, and now it's West Park, that library was there, and that the library on the beach had been there for a specific amount of time. I got late a picture of the original library there, which I'm sure you probably remember on the beach, the Bernice Oster, where it was a glass building and it had a big flat top, but I didn't get it in my my presentation here. So, and then the Sterling Road Library is also, that's technically Hollywood, right? Because half of Sterling Road is not Hollywood and the other half is, depending on when you're moving down the way. So there's a point where they decide that they need a bigger library than the one across the way here. And that ends up being into later than this. Let me just go through a couple more of these. This is the counter to the library across here. And this is probably late 60s, it looks like, with the hairdos and stuff like that. I don't think it's the 70s yet here. And here's another, which is probably later. I love this because I remember reading the newspapers that were on these racks here. And this old Florida Atlantic University shirt. This is definitely into the 70s. This probably is by the time that the Broward County system had taken over here. This one has, it has a calendar open here. So it told us that it was like 1972, I believe. And I just love like the kids sitting on the table and stuff. I know that's probably not what you want in a library anymore, but in 1972 it was cool to do this. She definitely did not like this story here. And we still have in the library system, you know, the kid readings to this day, you know, and this is like amazing, you know, especially like due to, you know, everything's on your phone now, you know, and it's really great when I hear like a young person that wants to go to the library or check out books or read a book or any of that stuff, you know. It's just super important. This one also was from the A&P, the one on Johnson. I love the shot, you know, it's just super cool. And then this, if it wasn't my wife, it would be my wife. She used to, after they built the building across over here, she used to walk over to the old one and just smell inside the book return because it smelled like the old library, you know? True?
She's a huffer.
I'm not the only one.
Kind of looks like her, you know? But this was the one on, did you ever go on the one on Johnson 441? I think so. No? Okay. So, I mean, it even says it on here, you know, oh, this is 1970. Wow. So they were there earlier than I thought, you know? This again is here across the way. So now we're building up to when they needed a new library. And I don't have the statistics on what our population was or anything, but what's our population now? Like 150 to 170, you know? So we didn't really grow from 1971, we had 104,000, to now, which is 50 years, we only grew 50,000 more people, you know? So 50 years, that's 10,000 a decade, you know?
That's enough.
Well, that's what they're expecting, but can we really do that, you know? And can the whole system handle that, you know?
And that was Pembroke Pines too, though, right?
What's that?
Would Pembroke Pines have been included?
No.
At that time?
No. Pembroke Pines became into existence about that time, you know? Like my parents moved in 59, and it was technically West Hollywood.
Right.
Probably unincorporated Broward, but our library branch was called West Hollywood. The post office we went there was the one on 441, like where the Home Depot was. That was there up until maybe 5, 6 years, 10 years ago. And we would write West Hollywood on, I even remember it on something that I mailed to my grandmother. So in September of 2000, it was recommended that we needed a bigger library, you know, from the one that was across the way there. And again, you know, it took them 3 years to hammer out a deal. They wanted to build the county. Well, I didn't really get into the county taking over. In 1974, the county wanted to have a whole system. You know, they technically were over the Fort Lauderdale and the 2 other libraries there, but they wanted to include a whole system, and there were 2 other libraries that were interested in being involved, but Hollywood was the first one to open in 1974. And that was after they had chose, you know, which spots to move to over here in 74. So in 2000, we had outgrown that library over here. And they decided that, you know, again, since they own the property and there was the one spot that I showed you on the other side, that they needed a bigger library. And they wanted 40,000 square feet that was going to hold 70,000 books. And after hammering out a deal with the city commission, the county was going to offer $6.1 million to build this library here. But the city felt that we're going to need more room. So they wanted to have a second floor. And the county wasn't going to go for the second floor, so the city had decided that they were going to secure this building as a 1-story building, that if they wanted to build the second floor on it, they could build one on there. that was not a good idea. They had decided by going back and forth with the county and the city by 2003 that the city would donate enough money to build the second floor so it would already be on this building instead of just securing the whole building. So the city was going to give about $400,000 to secure the building on the top. When they had finally agreed in 2003, the county was given $6.1 million, and the city was putting $2.9 million to build the second floor. I'm not even sure if the county has ever done anything upstairs here. You know, I think the city has done stuff up there forever, and the temporary police department, Karen had mentioned to me, is going to be up here, probably just administrative or stuff like that.
And the city's gonna put some offices up there, they told me that today.
Right, yeah. And so, and then the old library is what they use for that. And I showed that mural earlier that was on the wall. Tina went in there to see if it was still in there, and they said it had been painted over, but then oddly enough, Karen said she had been in there in the last X amount of years, and the mural was still there. So at the same time that they were choosing to build a library here, obviously previous to that, they had built, this was supposed to be a regional library, but they ended up building the regional library in the early 80s at where BCC is. And there's no police in here right now. So when the BCC building was being built, it was right near my house. And a kid in my neighborhood went out there at the nighttime, and the bulldozer had keys. He didn't know how to drive it, drove it straight to the lake out there. And he never got arrested, and I'm not telling you his name.
Did it completely submerge?
Well, yeah, and he just swam out and went home. I was not there, but he told about me afterwards.
I heard.
No, I wasn't there actually, but, and I don't think Ronnie's alive anymore, but I'm not going to tell you his last name. I mean, we were right near Perry Airport, so we'd do dumb stuff like running out there after the jackrabbits and all that stuff. I don't know. You did stuff like that in the 70s and 80s, didn't you? I don't know. So they were choosing to build a couple more libraries and then build this place. So the Sterling Road Library was at the same time that they were deciding to build this library. And that opened up in 2003. But for a cost of $5 million, and it was 20,000 square feet. So this would have been 3 times the size of, or more than that. The cool thing that I always thought about the Sterling Road Library, and these are all under the Broward County Library System now. This started in '74, so they were building these. Was I always thought that that building kind of looked cool on that property. And it was kind of hidden, and that was the architect's sort of design, was that he wanted to make it seamless on those 5 acres, and like they painted it like the color palette of the trees, you know, so it was mustard and rust and green, and they wanted to blend in, you know. One of the most interesting things too with the Sterling Road Library was when the real estate bust happened in 2009, someone stole all the copper piping out of the air conditioner system on Sterling Road at the library, and it took them a long time to reopen. The copper was estimated at $600 to repair at that time, but to repair the whole air conditioning system that they had to do, it was $75,000. So to get back to this building here, the groundbreaking was in 2004. They had secured that they were going to build the second floor here. This is pretty much the building that you see here. During the time that between here and they built it, there were 2 films that were kind of filmed on this property, or they had a lot of storage. One called 3 Blind Mice, and then another one, there were some great pictures, but the archives couldn't get them for me. And they also had some pictures of like, I guess they used the is it Richard Roberts, who was the archives guy?
Yeah.
They had pictures of his office, but I think it was staged. It wasn't what was actually in his office at the time. I don't know if anyone knows Patricia Smith, but so this pamphlet was from the research center. And then the dedication was 3 years later. It took them 3 years to build this building. And the library stayed open across then, until then. I thought in my mind that this was here earlier than this, you know, because I've lived downtown Tina and I since 1989 and didn't realize that we had went to this library over here for such a long time, you know. Although this is a long time, this is, you know, 28 years now that they've been in this building. This is just like the paperwork from, you know, who was here, you know, the mayor and all the people that went there. It was just kind of cool that we had that program in here. I think that may be it. Yeah. So you kind of, you know, like this library has been here through a lot of things. I think library usage is down. I didn't ask anybody now, but I remember that like when I used to have to come and get a computer here in the library system, you had to sign your name and wait, you know. And now in the computer room, it's a third full. I mean, everyone's computer is their telephone now, you know. But I do still see like kids coming to the library and, you know, people checking out books. And, you know, I started using the system where, you know, you could look online and, you know, I'd get them to send stuff from the main library. And
Yeah, you can check out ebooks through the library on that.
I'm still no good with that. I don't know why. I don't know if I have to feel the ink or something and something. You know, I can't read something. You know, I feel like I'm scrolling forever to read it. I don't know.
Well, let's hope we have 50 more years of the library.
Yes, and I know you. What department do you work for in the library system?
So I'm Kathy Worthman. I'm currently the Library Advisory Board Chair for the county library system, but I used to work at the South Regional Library in the original building. I'm not sharing any bad stories.
I didn't do it. So, and what do you know of like the usage of the library now?
Well, my first job with the library started in 1996. We had just been named the Library of the Year. Not coincidentally, but...
This one here or South Regional?
So the whole library
system
was
right?
called the Library of the Year. And I worked at the Community Technology Center. So at the main library downtown, we had 6 computers that you could access Microsoft Office products on. That was it for the county, for computer usage. And people came, you know, it was totally new. You had to figure it out. We were everything text-based for email and such. And so then when there actually was internet access, I remember when it, you know, was a battle
Right.
on the computer. And my happiest day was when we got an automated system that would time people out so that the next people could get on.
Right. So one of the interesting things that I had learned from a peer in the music world, Thurston Moore from Sonic Youth, while he was writing his book, the Broward County Library was like the only library that still had microfiche. You know, and he even wrote in the back of the book, like he lives in London and some other places, but he lives in Coral Gables for part of the year, and he spent his whole winter coming up to the Fort Lauderdale Main Library because it was the only place that he could get this information anymore, you know. Everyone had either digitized it or whatever, so it was just, and this was only recently, he wrote the book last year, so he's probably writing in the last 3 or 4 years, and it was just kind of fun talking to him about it, you know. other than he drove on the house and he could have had dinner with us or something, you know. I know he'd want to, actually, you know. But I do, you know, in conclusion, this place means a lot to me. You know, I've come here so often. I've rode my bike here. I've locked my bike up out there forever. I've read, you know, The Timeless Way of Building, and probably instigated me a lot of the things that I read in this building to be on the Historical Society. I would not be on the Historical Society if it wasn't for Karen having her lectures here initially, and they had a lecture about the Hollywood Sportatorium here 6 years ago, 7 years ago, something like that, and it really sparked me to, like, I need to get involved with these people. I was on the Historic Preservation Board at the time, and I would communicate with them, you know, hey, they want to do this with the building, but I really, Karen really locked me into being part of the Hollywood Historical Society, and the lectures are now on Sterling Road, and she does a fabulous job, like some of the greatest things. Every year, and I have to work at the record store on Sundays, and I miss them all. I hate.
Remember, all of our lectures, including this one,
Right.
are on Hollywood Historical Society YouTube page.
Right.
And we've been doing that for how long, Steve? How long have you
7
been-
years, 10
7
years.
years, yeah, because next year will be my 10th year of doing the lectures.
Right.
And the series is already planned.
And Clive was telling me, I know the one at Moyes had to be great,
Oh my
but
God.
I forget which one it was, but you'll tell me afterwards, that he was,
Ted Grossman.
well, I know that part. I know that part. But Clive was at a lecture for something else, and he heard someone's voice, and it was Ted Grossman, you know, Night Train, WLRN, Ted Grossman. And he's not even facing him. And he hears Ted Grossman, you know, it's like, wait, I know that voice, you know. I did show the library on Polk Street, because I had some postcards, but it was of that one. So, you know, I really appreciate that the county asked us to come down here and do this. I thought it was important to tell the history of the library system of Hollywood. And when Broward County had come in and taken it over, Broward County really started with this library. I forget the two other, Riverland maybe. There were two others that came in about the same time, but Hollywood wanted to be the first one to get in on it. I do see a question here.
I had a comment. In the library behind it, I remember in the early 90s, the kids' reading was on the second floor.
Oh, wow. So some of these pictures may have been up there.
That what you're saying that the library didn't have the second floor, but I remember the kids' reading distinctively going up the stairs for the reading.
So maybe they had a reading room or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah,
Did you ever
kids'
go
room.
up there or no?
What?
Did you ever go up or no?
Back in the 90s,
Right.
I got my library card 5-ish or so for the reading programs at the Hollywood Library here
Right.
in the early 90s.
I just wanted to give a big plug here. I saw somebody with the Friends of the Library t-shirt, but she's not in the room. But through the Friends of the Library program and the volunteer programs here, there are classes, all kinds of classes going on every day for citizenship, helping people prepare for the GED, English cafe for people who are learning to speak English, and vice versa, people who want to learn Spanish or Creole, as well as downtown at the main library in Fort Lauderdale. They have this incredible creation station that it is all free to use, and there's all this technology up on the floor. They've got green screen technology to be able to create your own videos. They have a 3D printer that you can use. And they've got staff there that will help you do all of these things. They'll help you transfer things to video. It's an amazing resource. So, and that's why the library won another award just a few years ago as one of the top library systems in the country. And you go to any Broward branch. I've never been in a bad one. I've been in many of them, and they're beautiful. I mean,
I will say this, that we initially accidentally booked the wrong date we had next Monday, but that's Tina and my 35th wedding anniversary, so we had to change it. But when I look through the calendar, I'm like, even for today, like the whole library system, I had to scroll for about 5 minutes, you know, like there's so much going on. It's like, all right, we're at 11 o'clock. You know, we're at 11:30. I got to get to 6:30 here eventually, but it is amazing how important, you know, reading is troubled in our school system right now. We have a governor that's taking books out of schools, you know, and the library is a source of where you can find those books that aren't what you're allowed to read in schools. You know, I'm not sure if that is a way to even, you know, like squelch people from even reading. You know, my niece and nephew are both school teachers, and my niece like just cried her first year because she just had a bookshelf with like it was covered. The kids weren't even allowed to look at the book, which like was 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So the library replaces, you know, these things that are not allowed in the public school in some of these areas. And I guess it's probably more interesting if you go to the library and get a book that you want to read as opposed to the book that the teacher told you that you have to read, you know? Although the teacher may have very good intentions on why you should read that book, or we just have a class on it or whatever, but from, like I said, you still can get DVDs here, CDs here, you know. Again, I never remember if you could get records from the library, but I'm sure you could at the time, you know. I probably already had too many by the time that I needed them. I do remember getting some cassettes, and the 16 millimeter film thing was just crazy. I mean, this guy was a filmmaker, so he wanted to like show these things, you know. I do have to tell one other story of Cliff, the filmmaker, which again is kind of.
They are recording that.
Did I say his last name? He's a filmmaker, so he'd take a movie more than once out of the library, and he would watch, and he'd find one scene that he knew he could do exactly like that scene. And he'd put the little plug over it, and he'd film the scene, and through the whole movie, it would be the movie, and then it would be him and his friend doing the scene. But he never knew when someone watched it if they could even tell if it was anything different, you know? It would only be like a minute or something, you know? I'm sure they dressed up just like the people, you know? And Cliff was kind of your landlord, but probably the greatest landlord ever. You know, he's a super great guy. But he made like movies between, like his real movies were like mostly like silent films, but they were somewhere between not really Charlie Chaplin, but then like European filmmakers. So they were very bizarre. But he tried to like. But the toughest part about that was he was never going to know what people did when they watched it or whatever, you know? I mean, I'm sure he loved to prank about the whole thing, but I just thought about that now, you know? So, I mean, that's unfortunate. You don't want to see pages out of the book or any of that stuff. I do also know that there's this one book about Alice Cooper that the only place that anyone, I couldn't even find it like for like less than lots of money, that the Broward County Library System had still had it when I wanted to read that book, you know? And that's one of the most interesting things about, like, libraries can have books that are very limited in access of ever getting again, nonetheless, like, buying one. So it's really important.
You can also do interlibrary loans. If you can't find a book in our system, you can get it from somewhere else.
And does Amy Miller still do that or no? So Larry Joe Miller's wife, or Amy, has done that for many years, you know? And again, every library I've went to, I mean, my dad lived out near South Regional, so at the end of my dad's life, I had to take care of him out in the old house in Pembroke Pines, and I used to walk and he'd go in his power chair and we'd go to the library and we'd rent like 15 DVDs, you know, and then he'd race home and I'd have to like run after him so he doesn't get hit on 72nd or whatever, you know. But it was a way that, it was a pacifier for him so I could go home and sleep at home while my dad watched the DVDs until I could get back and he'd forget all his medicine and all his things. But that's what happens when you take care of your parents. So I want to say that thank you for the library. I think you have a question, Karen?
No, I just wanted to say that it's the 50th anniversary of the libraries, and we made a poster. Allison Grubbs was one of our speakers, and she's the head librarian in Fort Lauderdale, in the Broward building in Fort Lauderdale. So those are pictures of all the Broward County libraries.
And I want to finally say that being a member of the Hollywood Historical Society has been fantastic, and everyone who has donated to the Hollywood Historical Society is our best friends. And then everybody else is our friends too. But we have a lot of information here. We have some books that we have here. We've been doing some really great things with the Historical Society. Last year and this year we had this whole program with 6 different schools, and we took them on tours and had a lot to do with addicts and Liberia, and we reached out where we had a charter school, we had a Montessori school, and we had public schools, and I'm sort of biased to public schools, but I ended up really appreciating those 2 other schools too, you know, and one of them I really felt was just going to be like Animal House when I went down to that school, and they were really like put together well. I was impressed by the teachers, you know. I guess we were all in the position that, you know, whatever we're given to do, you know, regardless of what the red tape is above it or below it, the people that are dedicated to doing their jobs is what's most important. And I saw dedication out of all of these teachers, you know. I also have to say that like the day that they had decided that they were going to close Olson, that Andy and I had to go to the school the next day, you know, and to sort of witness those kids. Like one kid said to me, "Does our school suck?" You know, and it's just like, no, not at all. Your school administrator sucks, or whatever, meaning the county guy. That's the guy who sucks, you know.
Do you want me to keep recording this?
Yeah. So I just wanted to say at the end of our program, we had all those kids from the middle and high schools like do an art show, and then one of the girls' pieces of art was so good that we had decided that she made a portrait of Joseph Young, and it ended up sort of being in the pop art style, so we ended up making the shirt. And then when we had the walking tour of that time, which again, Karen deserves a lot of credit for the walking tours.
Closed in 29 minutes.
Whoa! Damn, I got 31 minutes to go.
20 minutes. Please be sure to say your word.
So with the walking tour, we ended up getting, the CRA to sponsor us on the walking tour, and we've had such a great experience, a lot of attendance on the walking tour. The walking tour has changed so much because downtown has changed so much because of development. But again, Karen deserves a hand for pushing that so hard and continuing to go out there in the heat at those car shows, and sitting out there and showing off our shirts and showing off our books. And we do have, of course, this book, Joan's book, but we have newer versions of this, but this is like one of the originals of the History of Hollywood book. Another thing too is, with these young kids, we need to influence them to write the history from 1960 on, because Clive and I are losing our minds. So I want to thank you all for coming here. If you want to talk about the library system or any of that stuff, that would be great. You guys are all awesome. I know most of you by face here.